this is an historic moment in our lives.
Amen.
Now, my father was a truck driver. He drove a truck for 35 years. And he passed away with his first retirement check in his pocket, uncashed. He and my mom raised 7 kids. Now, just having a job doesn't solve all your problems, as all of you know. Because as our family expanded, we went from 1 to 7. Parents never owned a home. We were renters. As the family kept expanding, some of you know this story, couldn't find a place to rent. Someone, back in the 50s, there were people who wouldn't rent if you had kids, and if you had more than one, they wouldn't rent. And so sometimes we used to hide behind cars while my parents negotiated with the landlord. And then when they found us out, we were kicked out. By the time I was 17, we lived in 21 different places, including a couple cars. Now, I mention that because I'm not a missionary to workers. This is where I come from. I know what people go through. And I know at this time in our country's history, with there being 15 million Americans out of work and another 12 million underemployed, with so many people having lost their job because of NAFTA and GATT and China trade, with our whole way of life being threatened, with everything that people have ever worked a lifetime for being on the line, people's homes on the line, the education of their children on the line, health care on the line, retirement security on the line. Everything is on the line today. And so when the corporations or their servants in state government decide that they are going to take the one vehicle that workers have to be able to put them in a position of equality, and take that one vehicle called collective bargaining and just shred it, that is the time that we have to fight back. We have no choice but to fight back. The brothers and the sisters here from the House of Labor understand that everything's changed at the bargaining table over the last few years. It's not been about what are you going to get in terms of increased wages. The argument's turned. It's been about givebacks. But then, on benefits, because the benefits can be worth real money, it's important to fight for decent benefits, and it's important to be able to have control over working conditions. So now, the people who have masterminded this effort to try to knock out collective bargaining, today they announced, well, you know what? We'll let you bargain your wages, but you're not going to be able to bargain your benefits or your working conditions. Look, who do they think they're talking to? What do they think we are? Did we fall off a Christmas tree when you start thinking of, well, you can negotiate for wages? Well, suppose there is no money for wage increases, but you know one thing, those benefits can be very meaningful, because the benefits include health care, they include retirement security, and the working conditions can have a tremendous impact. If you can't negotiate for your working conditions, what does collective bargaining mean then? So what they're trying to do, they're trying to split labor. This is part of the corporate strategy, split labor. Now, Lincoln gave a speech in 1858 where he said, a house divided against itself, what?
Will not stand.
That's right. We in the House of Labor and those who support the House of Labor must be united. We cannot be divided. We must say that when it comes to collective bargaining, it's all or nothing. You can't tell us you can't call it collective bargaining if you're making a unilateral decision on benefits and on working conditions. Either workers have a choice, either workers have a voice, or they don't. And we are not going to go in this state and put our workers in a form of servitude to any government. That needs to be an American. I was with 10,000 workers workers in Columbus on Tuesday, and I saw how they came together from all over the state, from every rank in the community. I was there with policemen and firemen who told me that every time they go to a fire, they have these special gloves, and the gloves often get ruined, and they cost $71 a pair. Wow. And if they can't get that in their contract that they are entitled to another pair of gloves, what are you supposed to have to do? They have to buy their own. Now this is, or go without them. This is the kind of thing. It may not make a big difference to some of the people who are the bosses, but it makes every bit of difference, the workers. And so I was there with people who teach our children, and people who care for the elderly, and people who do the everyday work of government. And frankly, these government employees, they are the government. When we talk of government, who's government? It's not just the buildings, it's the people who work there. It's the people who serve. And when we start reducing government employees, people who decided to spend their whole life in service, when we start telling them that they're less than, that they don't have rights anymore, what we've basically done is to cut the legs out from the whole principle of public service. This is our government, and they are the government, and they're working in our stead. All of a sudden, you know, people can come from Wall Street and decide, well, you know, it's not necessary to have state workers anymore. It's not necessary for them to have rights. Isn't it interesting where they start talking about cutting workers' wages, cutting workers' benefits, changing work conditions, and the same type of thinking that's saying that looked the other way when Wall Street was paying itself millions of dollars in bonuses while they were taking U.S. tax dollars to be bailed out. That's not fair. That's not right. The day has to be long past when workers are going to be taken for suckers anymore. People only ask to be treated fairly. They only ask for basic rights. And it was our grandparents and some of our great-grandparents struggled in the 30s against very tough conditions where people wanted them to not have any rights at all. And this whole idea of trying to make sure that workers have rights, this is part of the growth of a democratic society. And if all of a sudden we go in the other direction, what we're doing is we're diminishing the quality of our democracy. This is an economic rights movement, and frankly, the striving for workers' rights is a civil rights movement. Now, by workers' rights, what do I mean? I mean the right to organize. You have to have in a democratic society the right to organize, the right to collective bargaining, the right to strike, the right to decent wages and benefits, the right to a safe workplace, the right to sue your employer if they maintain an unsafe workplace, the right to a secure retirement, the right to participate in the democratic process. These aren't special considerations that are given to people. They're inherent rights. They're rights that people have because they participate in making an economy move. This is something that we, as Americans, have to take a stand on. And all across this country, in Wisconsin, where I'm going to be in a few weeks, in Washington State, where a few days ago I joined 1,000 workers in the state capitol, backing up the workers in Wisconsin, at the state capitol in Columbus, in Indiana, all over this country. Americans are waking up to what's on the line. And this is not only about public workers, because if they can break AFSCME and these other unions, let me tell you, the door is wide open to go after every other union. We have to stand together. Solidarity forever. Solidarity. This is about an economy that is starting to blame the victims. We have a jobless recovery. Corporate profits keep going up. Wall Street's doing better than ever. The banks have recovered. But I don't care where I'm at in this state or in this country, I can tell you that all over America, people are experiencing great difficulties being able to make ends meet. Most people are just a paycheck away from economic oblivion. And at this point, we have a jobless recovery. We're told how everything's going better. But I don't know who they're talking about, not the people that I serve. So if you have a home that's still in jeopardy, this is an issue that affects you. Because we have to fight for our economic rights. And it matters to people if they have a few extra bucks in their pocket. Today it matters more than ever. When I look from a vantage point in Washington, D.C., and I see how all of government has become a machine that takes the wealth from the mass of people and sends it to the top. That's what our taxation system is about. Takes the wealth from the American people and gives it to the top 1% through tax breaks. That's what our energy policies are about. Look at how much gasoline is going up to. Takes the wealth from the American people, gives it to the oil companies. They'll look for any excuse to jack up prices. That's what our agriculture system is about. That's what our banking system is about. That's what war is about. Takes the wealth from the American people and puts it in the hands of the arms contractors. What we have now is a choice. What kind of country do we want? This is really a very personal choice. Each of us has to answer. Now, we're all good Americans. But we have to ask ourselves, what kind of country do we want? None of us ever thought we'd ever get to this point. None of us ever thought we'd ever find ourselves in a position where after years of work, people would have to worry about whether they'd have a home or not. Where after years of work, people would have to worry about whether they had any retirement security or not. Where after years of work, people would have to worry about whether their health care is going to be covered. Where after years of work, people now have to start worrying about Social Security? No, 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 no. It's time that the corporations started to be concerned about the people rising up and fighting back for their basic economic rights. This is America. That's who we are.